So welcome everyone back here for another episode of our Dumpster Talk, and we are here joined with a special guest, Michael Diller. Michael Diller is a psychologist, and he works at WellSpan Health. He also is very connected with Dan, our owner.
Yeah.
Just got to catch up with him a little bit.
Yeah, that was cool.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Todd and I also are grads of 2020.
Yes.
So with with Dan's daughter, Kat, and also with your daughter, Jenna.
Absolutely, yeah. So we go back a little ways. So yeah, it's really good to. Yeah, this is like a little bit of a reunion here. So it's very cool to be. It was good to see Dan, and it's good to be here in the dumpster. I've seen some other work you guys are doing. You guys are doing some really cool stuff. I appreciate being here with you guys today.
We appreciate it. It was good to see you Saturday at KJ's event. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, so he threw a great event. That was good to see you there. Yeah,
well, I appreciate that. It was an honor really to be asked to be a part of that and just to share a few kind of thoughts on the importance of mental health and yes, within the month, but also it was just a great event honoring his uncle and just celebrating just everyone coming together and providing opportunities to learn about mental health, but also just kind of just connect with each other, and also did it in a fun way, which is something was pretty special to be able to do that.
For sure.
We'll get into kind of your mental health, kind of what you're about and what your role is at WellSpan. Do you just want to kind of give an introduction of kind of yourself, kind of what you've been through, and what got you here at WellSpan now?
Yeah, so gosh, I look back and I think, gosh, it's probably not been that long since I've been at WellSpan, but now I look back, it's 24 years.
Wow.
So 24 years in WellSpan. Most of that time was in the behavioral health kind of spaces as a licensed clinical psychologist. Still hold my license, even though for the last 8 years plus now, I've not seen and working with patients and clients. Although I do maintain my license, it's very important to me to stay connected to the field and to my colleagues. But if we go back, it's just been something that's been very important to me. Kind of, if you look at my kind of why, like what I get up every day and kind of do what I do, is just really how can we find better ways to be there for each other and look after each other and just support each other, make sure that we're kind of walking with each other. That started pretty early in my life, how much I realized how important that was. Because I had people in my life who did that for me, and I never forgot how it made me feel. So that's kind of just high level of just kind of what was really important to me then. And then just kind of professionally, I found a way to give back early in my college career when I was at Pitt, University of Pittsburgh. I said I want to be a psychologist, and I connected with some mentors that were instrumental, that saw something in me and believed in me and said, we think you can keep going in this space. So I kept going. So here I am now. Clinical psychologist, and at WellSpan, I can speak a little bit of kind of what my current role is, which kind of changed recently if you want me to do that, guys.
Yes, sir. That'd be perfect.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's really good to be here with you guys. Yeah. So I'm thinking back in just history, because you said, 2020, class of 2020, and you guys back in high school. Good thoughts though. So my time here, where I'm at now, is my official title is Wellbeing Program Administrator. So people are like, what does that really mean, Wellbeing Program Administrator? So in September, I actually moved out of my director role for the Employee Assistance Program, which falls under the Well at Work or business development kind of portfolio of offerings to our employer community. Moved out of that space, and now I'm full-time into the well-being strategy for WellSpan Health. So what does that mean? I get a chance and really an honor to walk with and work with one of my friends and colleagues. He's my dyad leader partner, Dr. Ridge Salter. He's a family doc. And in 2022, our CEO, Roxana Gapster, asked Ridge and myself, Dr. Salter, to help stand up the strategy for well-being for this system. And so we took that on, kind of our part-time jobs on top of our full-time jobs, and we worked really hard with many people that were passionate in this space, and leaders and fellow colleagues at WellSpan to help stand it up. And we've done a lot of great things, a lot of good things. We continue to do that, but recently now I'm full-time into the well-being strategy of just how do we, again, my why that I shared with you before, how do we find better ways to take care of our people? And when we do that well, people are well, they are then better able to thrive, and then they're just that much better at being able to go out and be at their best in all of their roles within their professional spaces, but also even in their personal lives.
Yeah,
for sure. We were checking out your LinkedIn, and we saw the phrases well-being culture changer and the hope and resilience influencer. What do those phrases kind of mean to you?
Yeah, so, well-being culture changer, I think we all get a chance to play a role in that. So, at WellSpan, we really want to make sure that we influence the culture. So what does that really mean? It can mean different things, but truly we want a culture where people feel like they are seen and they're valued, their voice matters, that they can show up to be at their best, their authentic self. We want people to be able to thrive and be well. So how do we make sure that we create kind of cultures within our organization to support that? And that's really kind of the work, and we each get a chance to play a role in that. And that is, how do we show up for each other? How do we treat each other? How do we create intentional space to make sure that we can take care of ourselves in any given day? And sometimes that is real simple types of things that we can do for each other, and just sometimes it's just checking in with each other. It's when I was talking with Dan before coming in and sitting here together with you guys, we talked about being outside in nature and things like that, and the importance of that. And sometimes it's just taking a few minutes to just kind of level set, check kind of where your head space is and your heart space is, and then being able to then just take a few deep breaths, maybe look up, take it all in, outside nature, a few minutes, and then you carry on with your next step, whatever that is for the next part of your day. But when you do that, when you're intentional about that, it creates an opportunity for you to kind of reset and be able to be in a much better place than you were maybe a minute ago, or even a few minutes if you get a chance to spend time outside. And I know you guys are working outside, and we can maybe talk a little bit about what that's like for you guys. And there are, tremendous benefits of just stepping outside.
I think definitely, for me, mental health definitely, like I could see working in this industry for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
I've definitely had times where I was probably doing the same thing here on any given day, but some days my mental would be in a good place, some day in a bad place, and it can affect your work day for sure. And just days can stack up on each other. When you're in a bad headspace, it could be bad, or stack up when you're feeling good.
Yeah.
So it is
I
definitely important.
I think it is, and just for you to even share that, and talk about that, because I think, so this is something, at KJ's event too, I talked about having the great conversation. The great conversation is really in and of itself to be able to even have the insight to say, this is where I'm at today. And when you have that and you can express that and you're in touch with that, it gives you an opportunity then to be able to kind of do something about that, because you can then, when I say do something about that, to get yourself in a space that can move you into a positive direction, to be more helpful, to try to address some of those things when you're maybe not at your best. And sometimes that's connecting with other people. And maybe it's the two of you guys. You can kind of lean on each other and just say, hey, this is just kind of where I'm at. And then the other person, I just had a conversation. I was at an employer group, and it was just kind of self-described by their kind of HR leaders. This is a blue-collar team here. We don't really talk about mental health, but they created intentional space this day for having this conversation, this great conversation about mental health. And I talked to these two guys. They work on the line together. And the one said sometimes, almost like you said today, Alex, there are days, sometimes they can stack up on each other if I'm having some good days, or sometimes maybe I'm not in my best place. And these guys were talking about when they're not in their best place, they actually lean on the other person. The other person says, hey, you get yourself together and I got you. And they're able then to kind of find their way through those moments together. So there's that, kind of back to that kind of, being able to do that. Two things: to be insightful, to know that about yourself, and then also, if you're walking together with other people, how important is team and teamwork to make sure that you have each other's back? Yeah. Not just on the professional side, not just on kind of quality, safety, and making sure that all of those things are there in place, important. But if you don't start off with just kind of giving yourself a self-check and where am I at today, that impacts everything else that you do. So starting there is important. Can I ask you, Alex, how have you kind of how have you navigated that? I appreciate you sharing that. Like, those days we maybe, I think
I'm probably still navigating it today.
Yeah.
Every day, but I don't know. I think, well, what I was going to say, it's good that WellSpan kind of created your position, or has that position to look out for their people. And I would say here at the yard, Dan definitely looked like, we have a licensed, a therapist that we can talk to.
Okay.
That they kind of pay for. You can use it or you cannot.
I love that.
And I would honestly say when they first started it, I kind of wondered, like, why are we doing this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And haven't used it probably as much as I could, but yeah, it's good that workplaces do that to help you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still kind of navigating it, I guess, every day. Mental health is just it's a big thing, so.
Well, it is a big thing. And I got to tell you, Alex.
Very complex.
Oh, yeah, it is. Every single one of us, if we looked in the mirror, we're navigating it, all of us. So that's me sitting right here. You know, it's the person to your right and Todd. It's Dan. It's you. So I appreciate you being, you know, just honest about it. I'm still kind of navigating that, you know, and every day gives us a chance to kind of just check in with ourselves and then also find ways that how can we put the oxygen mask on first so that we can get through the day in the best way possible. But I'm with you. I'm still navigating it myself. But what I heard you say, though, is I love this idea. You know, you guys just having someone present. That's not every company or organization that does that. That's not necessarily typical or common. But I love that. I've known others that have done that. So basically, what you're doing is you're bringing mental health support right here on site. And I love when you're able to bring kind of that type of support, well-being and mental health to an organization, to the team members. Because then, you know, you don't have to, it removes all the other steps where someone may have to kind of reach out and set up an appointment and things like that. All of that's possible, and it does happen every day, and that's important to do that. But this gives you an opportunity.
Make it a little easier for you.
Just, you know, all you have to do is just kind of show up there. Do you know how it's been received? Because like you said, sometimes when that happens, people are, that's just be honest, when we talk about mental health, it hasn't always been an open conversation. When I look at you guys, where you are in kind of our generation right now, I do think we're much more open to talk about it.
Yeah,
you guys are much more open to talk about it. We're sitting here in the dumpster today and we're talking about mental health. This is not, if you look over your 80 plus recordings, is probably not a very common topic that happens in the dumpster. But it's an important conversation every place, not just here. But I love the fact that you brought someone in like this to be able to do that. Is that still happening today? Do they still come?
He's available, and all the employees know that. So
it's really whatever
I guess
you
that's
want.
as much as you can do.
I think it's really important in this industry too. Like the scrap industry's predominantly male. And I guess in the past they're not really used to showing emotion or showing their feelings. We're kind of in a good spot. Like Alex and I have been best friends since like 6th grade.
Oh wow!
So when we came in here, we've had conversations in here, and like whether it's Alex coming to me coming to Alex, and just talking to each other, saying like, hey, if I'm not myself, I'm sorry. This is why. And that's really helped. Just like help get through your day. Like I'm sure one of us feels a lot better after getting that off our chest. But that's not really heard of a lot in our industry, which is kind of sad. Because it's not beautiful work. Like we're working outside, which is amazing, but all the elements, whether it's hot, cold, raining, snow,
hard
we're
work.
out here. So being able to just kind of talk to those people, it's kind of easy once you start doing it. It's just you have to get over that kind of hump of just being able to talk to someone.
Right. And it's interesting. So you guys doing that, I love that. Do you think that others do they know that about you guys, that you kind of will talk openly about that? Now they're going to know now because we're sitting here talking here in the dumpster doing this now. But I mean, have you kind of shared that with others in terms of just kind of being open about just kind of where you are, checking with, which is not the norm. And you're absolutely right, Todd, it's not the norm, which I think is even all the more important that we're sitting here today having a conversation. So whoever listens in on this, wherever they may be, maybe they're in a similar type of work environment. And this creates the opportunity to be better. You know, instead of just trying to try to get better, we're just trying to just get by. This is really getting better. And part of that is that great conversation. You just talked about it. You talked about well-being culture changer and hope and resilience influencer. That's not just something that I'm trying to aspire to do, but what you just shared there, that's exactly what that is. You're offering the potential that if we're open about this, it gives me then a chance to be able to do something about it and be better. If I hide and just push that away, then it's still there and it will fester. And over time, it comes out in ways that can create even more challenges. So this gives an opportunity to try to give people permission to be able to be open about where am I at today? How can I be better? How do I find what I might need? And maybe it is talking to the person, the mental health person, professional that you have here, but maybe it's just talking to your friend. You mentioned it, Alex. It's important mental health is health. It is foundational to overall whole person well-being and your ability to thrive in whatever part of your life that is.
Do you
For
think,
sure.
would you say, you talked a little bit about kind of your why
Yeah.
and kind of what pushes you to do this work. Do you think you kind of always were in tune, like growing up and stuff, to kind of what you just said?
No.
Or
No.
did you ever see yourself maybe in another career path or?
Well, when I was younger, I said, "Oh gosh, I would love to play ice hockey someday." Go to a Division I school, and but when I grew up in Lancaster, we didn't have sheets of ice, so that was a little bit of a difficult. We played street hockey, things like so. I had these goals of that, even though I knew that wasn't a reality. But I still play. So I still play ice hockey now. That's my adult play therapy. That's one of the things that I do to try to help recharge, reset. And I do that with guys and friends that are all walks of industry, and we play, even though there will be no contracts in my future in terms of playing anywhere else, but just kind of locally and for fun. And that's great. When I was younger, though, I thought about maybe medicine. Maybe I would go into, maybe become a physician or something like that. I thought about medicine. But early on, and when I was at Pitt, I decided, I think I really want to give back in this way, to give back in psychology. And if you want, I'll share a little bit about kind of what kind of started that, and then what has kept it going. I didn't necessarily ever see myself in where I'm at now. But one of the things that really got me thinking was when I was in high school, I had a friend who was, he was 1 year ahead of me, and everything looked bright in his future in terms of he was all set to kind of go to the next level in college. And I had no idea truly of some of the struggles that he was having, and he ended up dying by suicide, and that was very, very challenging, difficult, kind of gut punch to me, and I wasn't even as close to him as many others, but it sent a ripple effect through our school community as well. And it got me thinking during that time, oh my gosh, how does someone get to that place, and how can we make sure that no one gets to that place? And so I kept thinking about that as I moved into college. Then it really shaped my kind of thinking that I think I want to give back in ways to be able to try to help people work through whatever that is and make sure they're not alone. So fast forward, that was instrumental. That was an instrumental kind of time in my life, and for many of my friends as well when that happened. But just the community at large. We moved forward. In 2017, I had another friend who ended up struggles with mental health through his life. And he was doing well. He was an amazing kind of light in this world. I'm just an amazing human being. But he ended up dying by suicide, and that was very, very difficult for me. Already into where I was in my kind of career and my profession, knowing what I've done, and that was really, really a challenge for me to really see that happen, and had to kind of work through a lot of emotions with that. I still think about him every day, or many days, maybe not every day, but I do miss him, and but it just gives me fuel to be able to just keep doing the work that we're doing, because it's important to make sure that we keep going, giving back in ways that we can, try to help people kind of make a difference in the life that they live, and make sure that they're supported along the way. So that gives, this opportunity that I have, and my colleagues in the mental health field, in the ways that they give back, psychologists and social workers and mental health professionals, in all the ways they give back, it's important,
For sure. What are some of the signs that people can, because not everyone, sadly, you don't learn about mental health in school that much, I feel like.
Yeah.
What are some of the signs that you can kind of see someone dealing with mental health?
Yeah, so I think it can be many different things, but typically you're going to see things like, if I know if Mike is kind of one way, you start to see maybe some mood changes with me. So maybe I'm usually kind of bubbly and energetic, but then I start maybe kind of changing, my mood becomes more withdrawn, and it's just different than what Mike shows up in a very different way. Maybe it's just one particular thing that happened on a given day, but it could happen over time, and then you start to see these changes in mood. I can become more irritable, and it happens more and more frequently, and it's just a real change in just kind of my personality and how I'm kind of presenting. That could be something there. I could become more distracted. Some of my work could be affected in terms of my concentration, my focus. those types of things could be, symptoms or signs. I may also have some things where I do become more socially withdrawn. I pull back from some friends and going out with other folks or spending time with people. I just become more isolated. There are many different things, and sometimes they're not as obvious. Sometimes on the outside, people are just kind of presenting that, everything is fine. And I think that's all the more reason to make sure that we create intentional space to check in with each other. That simple question of, when I say hi, to you, Alex, or check in with you, Todd, and it's just, when I say, how are you guys doing? How are you feeling? And those types of things. And I want to make sure that I genuinely kind of stick around and I'm present with you to make sure that we get a chance to really, talk about that if we need to, but genuinely just ask that question can make all the difference in the world. So sometimes people's appetite, their mood may change, as I mentioned. Their activity level may also change. It may decrease. There are many different signs that are out there that you can learn more about too. Sometimes people are like, well, where do I learn more about it? Even beyond just this conversation here. And I'm really giving kind of a real high level because there's not one set of symptoms or signs that someone may be struggling. But typically you may see a behavior kind of change or mood change that can kind of just say, okay, something's maybe not quite right, maybe a little bit off, and it gives somebody a chance to ask maybe a question. But sometimes it's uncomfortable or you're not sure what to ask or what to say, so I'm not sure if I should say anything. One of the special kind of organizations we have right here in Lancaster County is Mental Health America, Lancaster County, and they were part of the event with KJ's event over the weekend, as you know. And they have great resources in terms of education and to be able to become educated on signs and symptoms. They do trainings as well. They'll do that within the community and can be very helpful to learn those types of things. We have a bunch of resources, great resources at WellSpan Health as well on our behavioral health service line, WellSpan Phil Haven, to provide, resources to the community. So there are many different, those are just two. I mentioned WellSpan and WellSpan Phil Haven, but also Mental Health America, Lancaster County. But there are others. There are a lot of good.
I think it's a really important thing to learn, though, because you can only imagine, like, there could be someone that you see every day that's dealing with mental health. And not that people don't care, but they just might not know what to look for. So I think just even taking the chance to just learn more about it will help out a ton.
Yeah, and I think getting educated is important because sometimes it can be difficult. That you may just not see something that might be there. And so I think Todd, you make a great point. Become educated and gain some of those skills, and they're out there. These trainings are out there. There's education out there, signs and symptoms to be aware of, and then what can you do about it? How can you have that conversation? And resources I mentioned, within Mental Health America, Lancaster County is just one example, but they have different educational types of offerings that can be helpful with folks, and so people would say, well, gosh, how do I go about doing that? It really that simple kind of reaching out and connecting with them and asking the question, how do I learn more? And when you do that, it really empowers you then to be able to kind of be there for someone else in a way that you may not have been before, just because you learned some of those signs and symptoms. Hugely important. Tom.
Yeah, just like I think about it, like everyone goes through things in life. Like say I'm beating myself up about something for 2 weeks. And there's times where I'll go to Alex and talk to him, and it might just be a 5-minute conversation, but how good you feel after that 5-minute conversation compared to the 2 weeks you beat yourself up over. It's really eye-opening. So I just wonder, like, not everyone has a lot of people to talk to. So, like, my grandma always kind of, like, instilled that in me. Like, you never know what people are going home to. So it's really important to just talk to people. And it sounds more simple than it is, but just talking to people is a great start.
And that is the great conversation. That's another example of that, because truly we don't know. When you mention signs and symptoms, sometimes it is hard to see if there were signs and symptoms. Are there signs and symptoms of symptoms and something maybe not quite right with me or for you or for Alex? But it's asking those questions, and your grandmother is so right. You never know what they may be going home to. You never know what may be going on in someone's story. A lot of times, even people will say, "Well, gosh, I see them on social media," but social media truly is only really the tip of the iceberg. What happens truly in that person's whole life is below the surface of the water, and what we don't know within that is really what may be some of those storylines there. It gives us an invitation to ask questions, check in with each other, say hello, make eye contact, have a smile with someone, be kind, compassionate, empathic. When you're that, then that is a way of living and leading your life that can be culture changing, because people will remember that. They may not even remember what you said, but they will remember. Maya Angelou has a great saying at the end of I've learned. I've learned is just kind of insights from Maya Angelou over her lifetime, and she shares it in the very last part of it, the very last sentence in her takeaways, is that people will forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I believe that that's so true. And part of it starts with just sometimes the most simple gesture of kindness, care, compassion, empathy, having conversation.
Yeah. What do you think, going off of Todd's question, what do you think are some things, like you were talking with Dan when you first got in here about the importance of just getting outside, being around nature. Todd talk about being around family members and friends and just talking, being open.
Yeah.
What do you think are some ways, some on top of that, that can help?
Yeah, I mean, it's well. Let's talk about nature. I mean, for you guys working outside, what is that like for you guys to be outside? Even though sometimes the work itself can be challenging, it can be difficult. The weather may not always be the greatest as well. But just being outside, do you feel that makes a difference for you guys?
Yeah, right now this time of the year, I guess aside from like having allergies, but it's all the pollen and stuff. It's like a cheat code working out here. Like it's like so easy.
Yeah,
because we're out in the beautiful weather.
Yeah. I never really thought about it before, like this interview. I thought about it when Dan brought it up to me, but I think I do definitely like being outside a lot more. There's a lot more benefits. You're just out in nature, fresh air. Yeah. Obviously, going through school, you're inside a lot. Mm-hmm. So coming here pretty much right out of high school, it's been a great 4 years for me, I would say.
You feel free. Yeah. But then in the winter, it can be a little tough, too.
Yeah. But it makes you strong. Yeah. Like, there's never... Like, this day is a perfect day. Like, some days it's windy, raining, snowing. Yeah. But it just makes it tough.
Yeah. But, so it's I appreciate you guys sharing that. And, I think there's kind of definitely the good, and sometimes there can be a little bit of the bad, too, in terms of depending on what the weather may be kind of at any given moment. Today is a beautiful day, so I, again, appreciate and I'm grateful for the time that I have with you guys.
Raining in the winter is when that's
raining in the winter.
It's all your mindset on it, too.
True.
Like, I would say this was the first winter that I didn't really struggle to get through. Yeah. I remember last summer I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get through another winter. Yeah. But it's really all your mindset. That's on most things. Yeah. Like, if you don't go into it with a negative kind of thought on it right away, it'll be all right. We make it to the spring every year. So
yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned that ties in really nicely to your question, Alex. You were talking about like nature being helpful in terms of supporting good mental health and well-being. And and connection, being able to talk with family and spend time with family, and being able to talk with friends. Both of those are huge. But you just mentioned something that's really, really backed also in terms of when you talk about how do I foster resilience, how do I find ways through challenging times or adversity or change that can be somewhat challenging or difficult to kind of navigate. How do I find my way through that? So that's kind of resilience, to be able to navigate through all of those things. You mentioned something about mindset. That's huge. So sometimes a lot of times, we don't get to choose what has unfolded in our lives, but we always get the choice to figure out how I'm going to respond to that situation. So that in and of itself, realizing that sometimes life is going to kind of throw things at us, adversity will come to all of us, and we'll have to find our way through it. But I get a chance. I have agency, or I'm empowered to figure out how am I going to respond. I get to choose how I'm going to respond. So then it gives me an opportunity to focus on what I have control over and what I don't, and then being able to put my energies to a place where it's going to be helpful for me. So that's an example of just mindset that you mentioned that I kind of tied into kind of a resilience strategy or a way to kind of navigate through kinds of things that may be a little bit more challenging. I'll give you a quick definition that we use from a friend of ours, a psychologist from Duke University, Brian Sexton. Dr. Sexton defines well-being in a very simple way, but it's really stayed with me and it resonates strongly. So he defines well-being as being able to see the good and the bad at the same time. To be able to see the good and the bad at the same time. As human beings, we're hardwired to go to the negative. We're hardwired to see the negative. If I have my list of 100 things and I get 99 of them done, during the day, where does my mind go at night? it typically goes to the one that I didn't get to. So we have to be intentional to find the good, to cultivate the good, and make sure that we name that and embrace that. And part of that is I get a chance to choose how I'm going to respond to a particular situation. And it also then just, it gives me this opportunity to realize that life is happening at the same time, the good and the bad happening at the same time, that life can be both beautiful and difficult at the same time, that hope and despair are happening at the same time. So that mindset that you said gives you, Todd, that you said, gives you that opportunity to say, how am I going to choose to respond to whatever that is that's happening in my life, whether that's here in the yard or anywhere else in your life. And that applies to all of us.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to change. Like back in high school, I had a terrible mindset on most things. Like I had a preconceived notion of like what I think's going to happen. And I still do that a little bit, but I've tried to get better at just kind of going into stuff open-minded.
Right.
And I also think it's important to, like, when you're having those days where it's just not going in your favor, having like that outlet that you can kind of go to.
Yeah.
Like mine's the gym.
Yes.
Like if I'm having a terrible gym or terrible
Day.
gym,
Yeah.
terrible day, I
got
go
you.
to the gym.
Yeah.
It used to be like football and stuff, but like as life changes, you have to kind of find new things. So the gym has really been that thing. Like if I'm having a terrible week, just kind of go get my anger or whatever frustration out there.
Right.
I think that's a big thing people in my generation miss. Like I have friends that don't really have like many hobbies, and I think that's not a bad thing, but the more hobbies you have and just the more you're active and doing things you enjoy, the better your overall mind and your mental health is going to be.
Yeah, and I think, there's research to support that too. So in terms of just, a lot of times, I had a colleague from University of Pennsylvania, and he would share this saying about contrasting interests, and what he meant by that was, it was Corey Newman, Dr. Corey Newman was his name, but what he meant was, whatever you do during your professional life and day, the course of that day, make sure you have something that you're doing different than that. Contrasting interests. Do something different than you do every day in your professional life. And so that could be going to the gym. Sometimes it's whatever that's uniquely connected to you and resonates with you. So when I mention words like recharge, reset, regroup, all of those types of things, rest is part of it too. What is it in your life that you do differently than what you're doing professionally to help you do all those things? Recharge, reset. Sometimes it's getting through, helping you as a kind of get through this has been a tough day or this has been a tough week, and you have an outlet to be able to kind of pour into. But that pouring into is also pouring back into you. And that's huge, to be able to kind of refill the cup, put the oxygen mask back on. And it's unique to yourself. So the gym may be, some people may, the gym's not for me. But sometimes it's even as simple as just doing some type of movement. Movement also has been shown to help with healthy, long living or healthy longevity of life.
For sure. Do you know any, I'm sure you work with a lot of companies. Do you know, best practices that companies can kind of implement to their day-to-day kind of operation to kind of spread more light on mental health, whether it's meetings in the morning once a week, stuff like that? Because I feel like we're pretty good here, but especially in our industry, there's not a lot of that. Yeah. So is there any, simple practices that you've seen kind of work?
Yeah, and I think, just making sure that you create awareness of just if there are, for those organizations that, the organizations that talk openly about well-being and just, we're here for you. These are your, kind of the ways that we're supporting you. This is how we're here for you. The benefit offerings are important, but part of that is really having a culture where you can talk about mental health, how important it is. Your mental health matters, you matter, and making sure that you take care of that. And hey, these are some things that we have for you as an organization that can help you take care of that. So that's just kind of on the benefit side or the resources side. You guys mentioned having an on-site kind of counselor coming in here, a mental health counselor. That's an example of that. Some companies will have an EAP, an employee assistance program, which offers many different things to help mental health, support good mental health, and make sure that we are able to support our teammates in terms of the counseling. If they need counseling through the EAP program, they can do that, where the company is paying for those sessions for someone. It's the confidential way to be able to gain that support. So that's an example there. But so sometimes it's simple to be able to just do things that help foster good mental health and well-being and thriving. And that is team members who are getting together and creating pockets of space where you actually connect with each other outside the mission, the goal, the metrics, the issues of the day, All of those things are necessary. You need to make sure you're connecting on all of that to make sure that, everything is moving in the direction you wish and need to move on the work side of things. But when you create time and space to just connect on just how are you doing, or we do a couple of things. So Ridge, Dr. Salter, and myself, and others now have started this at the beginning of a meeting. Take 3-4 minutes, and we call that vitamin G time. So we bring people into the meeting, and the first few minutes are just would Alex or Todd or anyone in the group today like to share what they're grateful for, or maybe one thing that a coworker has done in this last week that you're grateful for. To be intentional and focused on what that is. Remember, I mentioned we're kind of hardwired to go to the negative. This is an opportunity to be intentional to find the good, cultivate the good. The other thing is sharing wins. A lot of times we have goals, we're trying to achieve things, and then we set goals to go after something else once we're able to get to one place where we achieve something. But it's also important to make sure that we pause intentionally along the way, the journey, to make sure that we're recognizing the good work that we're doing, that each one plays a role in being able to contribute to, and creating those intentional moments to recognize that. All of that speaks to a culture of well-being and thriving, and making sure that we all are here to do something, contribute, and recognize our efforts to be able to do that. And it's powerful to be able to do those things.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy what you'll learn from your coworkers too in those kind of meetings.
Yeah.
Like even just when Eileen, I think it was Friday, came up to the office, we had like a 15-minute conversation. I learned stuff that I didn't know about Eileen and Matt up there, especially Matt. And it's just like those little things, like it makes more sense to me now, like how they are, or what's important to them, their why.
Yes.
But if you don't have those conversations, you never learn that about your coworkers. And it's pretty sad that, Matt's been here for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that about him at all, what he shared.
Yeah.
So that's pretty sad that I didn't know that for a year and a half, especially since we went on trips together.
Yeah.
But it's just that the importance of having those conversations, what you learn from it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I would just say too, it's, you mentioned I feel sad about that. I didn't know that. But the other side of that is now you do, because you asked, you had this conversation. And that's just an example. Those small things, when you get a chance to know someone outside of maybe kind of just the work, amazing things can happen. It's what you're speaking to is almost what your grandmother said. You never know what someone may be going home to. It's not necessarily in a negative way. It's just other parts of their life, other things that mean something to them, other things that are important to them. And then they may shed some insight into, kind of like you said, this is why kind of they do the things that they do, or what's and helps explain certain things. You get to know your team members, and when you do that, you're really doing something that becomes pretty special in any workforce, any organization that fosters teamwork in this way. You get to actually recognize and honor the humanity behind the work. And when you do that, that's where everything else gets better, because you get a chance to then be able to come together, and it opens up the door to be able to work together more closely.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a lot more empathy, and you're able to work better, not only inside of work, but also outside of work. You can kind of just understand them more.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just, it's powerful. That's, again, goes back to that human connection, our stories that we all live that's unique to ourselves. But when we shed a little light into that and offer that to someone else, it gives us the best chance then to be able to work together in ways that are going to be helpful, not just to the organization, but to each other, and not just in work, like you mentioned, Todd.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate it. We have a finale kind of question. I don't know if you have anything for us.
Yeah. Well, can I ask you? Well, maybe. Yeah, but go ahead. Yeah. Do you want to start? What's the finale? Oh, my gosh.
We always ask, like, what advice, because we're young. We started this when we were 19. Had to tweak the question a little bit. But what advice do you wish someone gave you back when you were 22, 23?
Yeah. I think it would be, it's kind of, there's two things kind of wrapped together. And we already touched on it even today, guys. I think for me, if someone would have reminded me or kind of shared the importance of building relationships, to make sure you're slowing down enough to pay attention and cultivate and make good connections, meaningful relationships. Because when we go through life and we look back on life, I think one of the greatest things that we will share, at least I know this in where I'm at in my life now, is that we will be so grateful for the relationships that for me personally, have had the honor of being a part of and that were meaningful to me. So it's not how many relationships you have or how many connections. It's really about the connection that you have that are meaningful relationships with depth. And sometimes it's one relationship that can be just instrumental in building resilience and kind of just growing stronger in your kind of life ahead. It's the relationships that matter. Research kind of supports that. It really does support it in terms of a healthy longevity of life. If you're going to do one thing, it's make sure you build and connect with meaningful relationships in your life. And then that other part of that's tied into that. You have to slow down enough to make sure that you give yourself time to recognize and create intentional space to build those relationships. So that's what my advice would be if I had the older person of me would share that back then, because so many times when you are kind of in your younger early career, you're driven to go chase goals and go set the goals and all absolutely important, but you have to make sure you slow down to take it all in, cultivate the good along the way, and part of that is building those relationships that mean something to you, that matters to you.
Sure.
That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this was awesome. Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. We thought it made sense for Mental Health Awareness Month. We'll make sure to have all the links below to all the different websites that you can check out to learn more about mental health awareness.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. And I appreciate the time for you guys to make the time to create space. I know it's Mental Health Awareness Month, but I do believe, and I think you guys will share this just based on our conversation today, that mental health is important every day. So, well beyond this month that we sit here together.
It's a very real thing.
It is. It's just part of who we are. And I appreciate you guys making the time for this conversation. It's important.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.
All right, guys.